Hello viewers, welcome to the Bachelor course of Population Studies. Today we will discuss economic diversity in India. The diversity in India is unique. Being a large country with large population, India presents endless varieties of physical features and cultural patterns. It is a land of many languages. It is only in India that people professes all the major religions of the world. In short, India is the epitome of the world. The vast population is composed of people having diverse creeds, customs and colors. Now, types of diversity in India. Types of diversity in India are diversity of physical features, racial diversity, linguistic diversity, religious diversity, caste diversity, economic diversity. Well, in this lecture, we shall focus only on economic diversity in India. India is a land of diversity. Even in the economic sphere, we find diversity and variations. Economic diversity or inequality is sometimes called income inequality, wealth inequality or the wealth gap. Economists generally focus on economic disparity in three ways, that is wealth, income and consumption. All people do not have uniform income and economic standard. Over 65% of people in India are suffering from poverty who do not even get 2 square meals a day. There are middle classes who work hard and save money for future generations. A new economic class has evolved who work in multinational companies and earn huge income. We can also find wealthy and rich people who have traditionally owned industries and land. They also enter politics and gain power. Thus, economic diversity in India has different shades with people of diverse income. Now, nature, extent and forms of economic diversity or inequality in India. To examine the distribution of income in India, a committee was appointed by the government under the chairmanship of Professor P.C. Mahalanobis. The committee submitted the report in 1964. Besides this committee, National Council of Applied Economic Research, that is NCAER, Reserve Bank of India, World Bank and many economists have undertaken important research studies relating to distribution of income. However, these studies relate to different periods of time and are based on different methodologies. The results of these studies are not strictly comparable. Higher Lorenz ratio or Gini-Coefficient points to a greater degree of inequality. Gini index in India was 33.4 in 2011-12, which points to an alarming magnitude of inequality in India. In India, 4 forms of economic inequalities are found. Number 1, inequality of income. Second, inequality of consumption expenditure. Third, inequality of wealth or assets holding. Fourth, regional inequality. Now we will discuss one by one. First one is inequality of income. Inequality of the distribution of income refers to a situation in which small section of society share large part of national income, whereas large section of society are devoid of income. Second one is inequality of consumption expenditure. Inequality in consumption expenditure refers to a situation in which a large percentage of total consumption expenditure is incurred by a small percentage of population. Inequality of consumption expenditure shows that a large percentage of bottom population has to struggle to survive, whereas a small percentage of top population enjoys a lavish lifestyle. Third one is inequality of wealth or asset holding. In India, along with inequality in the distribution of income, there also exist inequalities in the distribution of wealth. It can be estimated on the basis of distribution of land holdings, ownership of building property and ownership of shares of companies. Fourth one is regional inequality. Regional inequality refers to inequality of growth process across various states in the country and different regions within a single state. Some states or regions are far more prosperous than the others. Next is causes of economic diversity or inequality in India. There are several causes which give rise to economic diversity or inequality in India. First one is inequality in the ownership of land. Inequality in the ownership of land is the main cause of inequality of income in the rural areas. In rural areas, income of landless agricultural workers and small farmers is very low. They lead a miserable life. On the other hand, big farmers have very large incomes and these incomes are ever growing. They have vast capital resources. On the other hand, small farmers, for want of capital, fail to produce more from their tiny holdings. They remain poor and backward. It is the inequality of ownership of land that increases inequality of income and wealth in rural sectors. Second one is private ownership of property in urban areas. In urban areas, some people own large properties. On the other hand, large population living in urban area is poor. In this sector, capitalists, by investing their capital in industries, trade, transport and other occupations, earn handsome income. Middle and poor class in urban areas face great hardship to earn their livelihood. Consequently, inequality of wealth and income continues to persist in urban areas. Third one is laws of inheritance. Prevalence laws of inheritance in India have also contributed in perpetuating inequalities in the distribution of wealth and income. According to these laws, on the death of a rich person, his property is inherited by his offsprings. As a result of it, the descendants of the rich are invariably rich from the very start of their life. On the contrary, on the death of a poor person, his children inherit nothing but debts. Thus, laws of inheritance in India have rendered the distribution of wealth and income unequal on a permanent basis. Fourth one is inequality of professional training. Another important factor liable for inequalities is the difference in professional training. Income in certain professions like medical, engineering, company executive, law, etc. is relatively more than other professions. It is because of high cost involved in the initial training for these professions. People of poor strata cannot afford it. Largely, the persons from rich families opt for these professions and inequalities continue to persist. Next is inflation. Prices have been rising in India since 1956. Rising prices hit hard the poor class. Their real income goes down. On the other hand, traders and industrialists gain because of inflation as value of their stock goes up. Inflation is thus also responsible for aggravating inequalities of real income. Next is credit policy of financial institutions. Expansion of banking and other financial institutions like IDBI, IFCI, etc. have given financial assistance mostly to rich capitalists. Poor class has got very little financial assistance from them. Accordingly, it is the capitalist class that has been able to expand its industry and business more. On the other hand, poor class, for want of adequate credit facilities, has been unable to make any significant improvement in its economic conditions. Thus, the existing credit policy of the financial institutions has also contributed to the inequalities of wealth and income. Next is more burden of indirect taxes. Large number of taxes have been imposed in India after independence. The burden of indirect taxes like excise duty, sales tax, custom duty, value added tax has been quite heavy. The incidence of indirect taxes is much more on the poor than the rich. This burden reduces the real income of the poor. Increased burden of indirect taxes has thus widened the inequality of real income. Next is corruption and smuggling. Corruption and smuggling have also aggravated inequalities of income. Those capable of giving bribe succeed in procuring industrial license, permits and quotas. Those indulging in smuggling activities and their patrons acquire huge amount of ill-gotten money. Corruption and smuggling account for the generation of black money. Next one is unemployment. Unemployment and underemployment are important factors for inequality of income in India. In a state of unemployment, a man is deprived of all sources of income. In India, the number of unemployment has increased with every plan, since most of the unemployed persons belong to the poor sections of the society. An increase in their number has resulted in inequality of income. Tax evasion. Widespread tax evasion is responsible for inequalities in the distribution of wealth. The officers responsible for the collection of taxes are not so efficient. So, people succeed in evading the tax. They either do not pay any tax or pay much less than the actual tax due. Tax evasion leads to the creation of black money. The increasing amount of black money in Indian economy has accentuated inequalities in the distribution of wealth and income of India. Next is differences in natural qualities. No two persons have the same natural talent. Some are more gifted than others. Persons with superior intelligence, better physique and greater capacity for hard work must surpass others in the race of life. Some inherit a feeble mind in a feeble body and they naturally lag behind. Next is impact of economic diversity or inequality. Inequality of incomes leads to some very serious economic and social consequences. The growing income inequality in India has negatively impacted poor citizens' education and health care. People working in unorganized sectors are the worst sufferers of economic inequality. They are characterized by low wages, long working hours, lack of basic services such as first aid, drinking water and sanitation. Some of its impact on Indian economy are: first one is class conflict. It has created two sections in society, the haves and the have-nots, which are ever on the warpath. This has resulted in ever mounting social tensions and political discontent. Second one is political domination. The rich dominate the political machinery and they use it to promote their own exclusive interest. This results in corruption, graft and social injustice. The next is exploitation. The rich exploit the poor. The consciousness of this exploitation leads to political awakening and then agitation and even political revolution. Thus, inequality of income is an important cause of social and political instability. Next is creation of monopolies. Unequal incomes promote monopolies. These powerful monopolies and industrialists charge unfair prices from the consumers and thus crush the small producers. The bigger fish swallow the small fry. Next is suppression of talent. It is not easy for a poor man to make his way in life, however brilliant he may be. It is a great social loss that brainy people without money are unable to make their due contribution to social welfare. Undemocratic. Democracy is a farce when there is a wide gulf between the rich and the poor. Political equality is a myth without economic equality. Moral degradation. The rich are corrupted by the vice and the poor demoralized by the lack of economic strength. Thus, inequalities spoil the rich and degrade the poor. The poor man finds it almost impossible to regain the virtues of honesty and integrity. Human dignity is lost altogether. Next is government policy to reduce diversity or inequality. Ever since independence, The government has focused on reduction of inequalities of income and wealth in the country. Some of the measures which has been taken by our government to reduce inequality of income are: first one is land reforms. Land reforms have been introduced to remove inequality in the ownership of land. Land in excess of ceiling limit has been distributed among the tenant farmers and among the small and marginal holders. Second is extension of public sector. Government pursued a policy of assigning a flagship role to the public sector. Many commercial banks were nationalized in 1966-68. However, since 1991, there has been reversal of the government policy. Privatization has become the center stage of growth strategy. This is because public sector has only yielded inefficiency and bankruptcy. Next is encouragement to small scale and cottage industries. The government is providing support to develop small scale industry in India. Next is controls over monopolies and restrictive trade practices. Monopolies and Restrictive Trade Practices Act 1969 was passed to put a check on concentration of economic power. Next is employment and wage policies. Providing employment to the unemployed persons can reduce inequality. During 5-year plans, emphasis has been laid on providing more and more of employment opportunities. In this context, many special programs and projects have been introduced. Government has also sought to reduce inequalities of income by enacting Minimum Wages Act, Bonus Act, etc. Government has introduced many social security measures such as Employees State Insurance Act, Provident Fund Act and Maternity Benefit Act, etc. Next is pricing and distribution policies. Government should design the pricing and distribution policies to reduce the inequalities present in the society. Government should provide the basic amenities of lower price to the weaker sections of the society. Next is poverty alleviation programs. Government should frame poverty alleviation programs, particularly those which provide gainful employment to the economically weaker sections of the society. Next is fiscal policy. Fiscal policy is a policy which is concerned with the management of taxation system and public expenditure with a view to achieving definite objectives. The Government of India has so directed its fiscal policy as to achieve the objectives of reduction in inequality of income and wealth. Next is taxation. Policies of direct and indirect taxes aim at minimizing inequality of income. The direct taxes like income tax, corporation tax and capital gain tax have been levied at progressive rate on the rich class to appropriate a part of their income in the form of tax proceeds. The poor are exempted from the payment of income tax. The indirect taxes on luxuries are levied at higher rate. The burden of these taxes is borne by the rich section of the society. Next is public expenditure policy. The public expenditure policy of the government also aims at reducing the extent of inequalities of income. The money collected from the rich is used to increase income of the poor. Next is social security benefits. The government provides assistance to the poor against many insecurities and to raise their standard of living. These benefits are of several types like sickness benefits, maternity benefits, death relief, family pensions, social security for handicapped and old persons. Next is subsidies. Policy of granting subsidies has also been adopted in order to remove inequalities of income. With a view to improve the economic conditions of poor and weaker sections of the society, government gives subsidies on electricity, irrigation, water supply, housing, education and health facilities. Next is Dhan Yojana. It aimed at bringing the banking services to the poor, thus making them a part of financial sector of the country. Next is Measures to correct regional imbalances. Various measures have been taken to remove regional imbalances. First one is greater share out of central finance is made available to backward states by the Finance Commission. Next is for the efficient administration of poor states, central government gives them financial assistance. Next, special area development programs have been launched in backward states such as dry farming program, desert development program and drought prone area program, etc. Next is special facilities for industrial development in backward districts are allowed like tax concessions and subsidies, etc. Economic inequalities and 5-year plans. Economic growth with social justice has been one of the most important objectives of 5-year plans in India. Growth must be inclusive of all segments of the society rather than exclusive of larger section of the society. Keeping in mind the goal of social equality, Planning Commission of India adopted different strategies during different 5-year plans to achieve this goal. During the initial period of planning, that is up to third plan, the objective of equitable distribution was not given any center stage priority. However, in subsequent plans, equality received its due focus. Abolition of Jamindari system, ceiling on land holding, subsidy for use of HYV technology are important measures taken in the 5-year plans. But the plans are not able to succeed fully as the inequalities are not removed fully. To sum up, it can be stated that inequalities in the distribution of income and wealth are quite severe in India. The Government of India has been endeavoring to reduce inequalities of wealth and income in the country. Several measures have been adopted in this direction, but it could not gain much success. Various other measures were also suggested by the Planning Commission to minimize inequalities of wealth and income. Emphasis has also been laid on the reduction of inequalities during the course of various 5-year plans. But the present policy adopted by the government in recent years have been able to create some impact in arresting the growing trend of income inequalities in India. There is high need to get the effective implementation of public policy to solve the problems of people at the grassroots level which are still suffering. That is all for today. In next lecture, we will continue with some related issue. Thank you.